Professor Laoise McNamara, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this series. Laoise, you're the Vice Dean for Research and Innovation in the College of Science and Engineering in NUI Galway. And I'd like you to introduce yourself in case I butcher it. So Laoise.
So yes, my name is Laoise McNamara. I'm a Professor of Biomedical Engineering at NUI Galway, and I'm also the Vice Dean for Research and Innovation in the College of Science and Engineering. And I guess in the College of Science and Engineering, we have a particular strategic focus on innovation for health. And there's a large breadth of research activity across the whole biomedical science and engineering space that's relevant to researchers in the health space that are seeking to develop novel technologies and solutions for healthcare needs.
And I suppose just to kind of expand on that a tiny bit, when you say that there is that much kind of expertise, that kind of breaks down in a few different ways. I suppose there's, individuals and groups. Maybe you could expand on that a tiny bit?
Yeah, I guess, the College of Science and Engineering is made up of a number of schools, and within each school there would be research activities that would align with general health research area. So like we have a school of chemical and biological sciences, we have a school of natural sciences, we also have a school of mathematics, engineering and computer science. And within each of all of those schools, there are specific aspects of the research activity that's specifically seeking to address challenges arising from healthcare and from the biomedical science and engineering space. So the school itself has over 700 academic staff members and a wide range of researchers focused on various activities. And this specific space represents a large portion of the funded research activity in the college. So this area is very thriving area. People are securing funding from national and international sources to help develop a fundamental understanding of disease, but also to develop solutions for healthcare and disease problems presented.
That's amazing that there's so many people working in, I suppose, I'm not going to ask you to list all the different areas because if there's 700 people, that would indicate that there's quite a wide range of areas that they're working on, both from a technical perspective as well as trying to understand the different etiologies of diseases, etc. So for those of you listening who have an idea and are looking to engage with, say, technical expertise and that sort of stuff, it's probably a good place to start is just having a look on the website to see what those different disciplines are and who's working in those areas.
Yeah, and we do have a number of, I suppose, clusters that people can go to look at. CURAM is the Centre for Research in Medical Devices, which is a Science Foundation Ireland national funded centre that is based out of NUI Galway and is aligned with the College of Science and Engineering. So CURAM is very much focused on medical technologies and works with both, clinical and surgical collaborators, but also industry partners on specific medical device related challenges and solutions. We also have a large biomedical engineering activity here. And again, that is focused largely on the medical device development. And we have researchers in data science who, like human-centered data now is very important aspect of kind of the future development of technologies for treating various and monitoring various disease conditions and illnesses. So there's a strong focus going forward in linking in data science into the development of the next generation of medical technologies as well. So that they're kind of some of the clusters. But again, as I said, within each school, there would be specific individuals who are very focused in this space.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant point because a lot of the projects we'd see coming into the Health Innovation Hub are trending towards, heavy data analytics, etc., and using things maybe like machine learning or deep learning and AI, quote unquote AI, to build into telemedicine or remote monitoring, things like that. And they do need hardware as well as software. And there are groups like Insight that work in machine learning and natural language processing and things like that, and Adapt. They're both SFI centers as well that would develop things like user interfaces and user experience products and solutions that would ultimately tie into healthcare as well. Super, Alicia, thank you.
I might just add to that list, there's also, you know, a lot of activity around advanced manufacturing, and there's an iForm centre as well there. And we also have a centre for research training and PhD studies around genomics. So that's another area that should be, I suppose, interesting to people to be aware of, that there is at the kind of genomic area, there's a thriving activity in that space.
Yeah, and a very good point as well. Additive manufacturing and sometimes kind of known as 3D. What do they call it? 3D engineering? No, printing. 3D printing is quite useful. How it has its place in healthcare too, particularly for personalized solutions for people. But then again, that, you know, it all has to be teased out to, you know, around regulatory considerations and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so
one more to the list as well, just so that we have it, is regenerative medicine. There's a strong expertise in kind of stem cells and moving beyond stem cells now in, you know, harnessing I suppose the products that stem cells make that can have a therapeutic benefit. So there's a lot of activity in the university around regenerative medicine as well.
Yes, there's a massive I suppose breadth of expertise then, going from your, you know, using cells, stem cells, etc., the regenerative space, right through data up to, you know, making your medical devices or your different biomaterials or whatever it might be. So it covers a really wide gambit here in NUI Galway. So there should be something there if you are looking to partner with the university or to get some of that expertise. So that kind of brings on to the next question then, really, is, you know, why should a clinical entrepreneur or innovator engage with the university to develop their ideas? And I guess that's kind of like, what are the benefits of working with the university?
Yeah, so the first one, I suppose we've already got stuck into, which is, I suppose, the technical expertise. So there's, you know, a wide range of individuals with specific knowledge, know-how, and you know, they have the facilities and the I suppose the what we've seen in the past is that maybe your clinical or surgical or healthcare individual is the person who really knows the challenge and has identified the problem. And if you can engage that kind of problem and the on the ground knowledge of the types of solutions that are feasible, if you put them together with maybe a scientist or an engineer, that they can focus maybe on developing the specifics of the technology itself or a product or a device. So I think it's bringing together the real world needs with the technology development and solution development, and thinking of how that kind of synergies between the two areas can lead to novel solutions. So that would be kind of the first one. And I said as well, you know, these research groups and different areas across the university would have laboratory space and equipment. So collaboration with a university partner would then open up the potential for using specific equipment or getting access to laboratory space where, if it was relevant to a project area. Also within the university, there would be support for accessing funding streams. So we have a research office at NUI Galway, and there, I suppose PIs would be able to engage with the research office to help identify funding for the next step. So beyond the commercialization feasibility study or the case study, you know, taking the outputs of that and then identifying how to fund it to the next level would be something that the university is very experienced at doing. And then I guess the protection of any potential technology as well. So we have a technology transfer office here who are very much focusing on support for protecting ideas, so the intellectual property, and for giving advice on whether or not there's any competitors in the space, so the freedom to operate. Also around patenting, so if people have a novel idea, then they will get the support to first of all maybe file an invention disclosure form and then take some time then to scope out whether or not there's a patentable idea in here. And at the Technology Transfer Office at NUI Galway, there's a lot of expertise in terms of all of the aspects of pursuing that next step, which might be when you've identified a potential technology, you have a strong and credible solution in place, then you need to be scoping out how you might take that to a commercializable product. And I think what we see nowadays is those two things should start much earlier. So there would have been a time where people waited until they'd done all of the technology development and the research in the lab, let's say, before approaching someone like the Technology Transfer Office for support. But actually, nowadays, it's very important to engage with those supports early to make sure that you are operating in a space where there is a strong chance of commercial success, and that, you know, simple things like a competing patent being in place can be identified early and inform the next steps that someone takes in pursuing an idea.
Yeah, so there's a huge amount of supports there that, you know, they become more relevant as the more you dig into it, or the more you develop your idea as well. I'm just going to kind of just go through them really quickly. You mentioned that at the beginning, where it is the clinical people who, you know, I'll speak directly to the clinical people, are those of you working in healthcare. You see the problems, you know what the needs are, and you engage then with the university to find that expertise to help develop the solution. And this is kind of like you said, it's synergistic. I think it's really beneficial to both sides, because you're informing or helping the understanding from the technical perspective to you know where they should be looking, where the real problems are, and it really does grow. It's that kind of I suppose the concept of bringing a team together with the different skills. Like, you're not the person to do all of this on your own, and it is about linking in with the right people, and you're one of the right people. And there's probably somebody in working in the university who's the other right person at this stage to get this idea moving. And that idea of having lab space, like, you know, you don't run straight to the end, as you're saying, Leisha. You don't develop the technology and then you bring it to market looking for a solution. You kind of looking for customers or whatever. You do that earlier on. You find out who those customers are, and then you start to build up to develop the right solution for them. And that's where, again, you can access the lab space, the expertise to move it on those incremental steps. It's not building it right out to the end. It's building one small piece of it to prove it works, and then you move on to the next part. And I suppose the universities are, you know, really adept at that type of work. You jump in, Leisha, if I'm waffling here now as well. And the point you made about the funding as well, it kind of mirrors that kind of proof of concept, you know, building little bits, making it bigger all the time. The funding is the same thing. If you've leveraged funding and you use that money then to prove a point, or prove that there is a market, or that, you know, you're prototyping it a little bit, that then builds a body of evidence that goes into the next application, which is for a larger amount of funding, and you build a team, etc., to move it on to the next phase. And some medical technologies or devices or software will require, you know, loads of different components as they grow. And we have covered that in previous webinars, so you can look at those around building a case. And that whole piece then around, you mentioned the PI as well. So that's a principal investigator. They're the people that you ultimately will work with in a university. They're the experts, the PIs. And that's the other thing then is linking in with the Technology Transfer Offices. And this is a must for the application, at a minimum, to engage with the Tech Transfer Office to have them sign off on your application for this award. However, they do provide myriad services that do cover everything around, you know, protecting your idea. Leisha, you mentioned an invention disclosure form. So that's the earliest sort of record of your idea written down. that then they will work on to look at the patent space for you and all of that. So it really, again, they bring expertise to the table that you may not necessarily have, or that you would have to pay a lot of money for in the commercial side of things, or in third parties. And I'm happy to say we'll have Fionnuala Brown from the Technology Transfer Office here in Galway speaking to us or who has spoken to us in one of our other webinars. And then I suppose you have that access then to that ecosystem. Like, there's a lot of people in the university working in these different areas already, so there is kind of that it's an active space, so you won't be the only one doing it. So there's, I suppose, people who've walked the walk and can talk the talk as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a strong, I suppose, culture of innovation in the university. You know, people may be aware that we have a BioInnovate program, but on the basis of that, you know, there's a lot of interest in, you know, innovation, identifying needs, and trying to, you know, work on solutions for that. So the culture is strong across the university in terms of that. And in terms of the funding opportunities, you know, there's Enterprise Ireland, but also Horizon Europe, the European Innovation Council. There are, you know, disruptive technologies calls as well, you know, national calls. So there is a lot of funding out there for the next step, and liaising with within the ecosystem to get knowledge of previous applicants who've already applied for similar funding and secured it. And people are generally quite happy to help and share their experiences of applying and securing such funding mechanisms. So again, that's another added benefit to getting to know people within the university system, because they may bring expertise on the securing of the funding themselves as well.
And it's probably important to note as an aside that this opportunity to get funding, almost kind of it is debt-free funding. It's fairly rare. It's unique, particularly in terms of developing a kind of commercial product. Normally you'd have to get a loan, or you'd have to get investors in who take equity stakes and all that sort of stuff. Now, not that Enterprise Ireland don't take an equity stake, they do take a small one, but that's at a certain level as you move along, etc. But this is I don't want to say it's free money. It's not, because the work has to be done. It's public money, and it's spent in the right way, and even the European grants you mentioned and all that sort of stuff. But it is it's a really good opportunity for people, I think, to test their ideas, build their ideas, see if they hold water, and then develop them further without exposing themselves to too much risk. Yeah. I suppose, Laoise, I don't want to hold you too much longer. I'm looking at the clock here. I suppose if somebody was to engage with the university from your perspective, what should anyone thinking of engaging to develop his or her project need to prepare in advance?
Well, I think the first place to start is probably figuring out what type of person you need to engage with. So is it someone with, you know, chemistry knowledge or engineering knowledge? You know, is it a you know, a particular type of technology you envision? So would it be something that has electrical stimulation involved, or is it a physical device that maybe would be implanted into the body? They would bring in different types of expertise. You could have, you know, as I said earlier, the kind of engineering knowledge of manufacturing might be important there. How you're going to develop a very intricate device, or you might have electrical engineering information around how to, I suppose, design devices that specifically can be used within the human body safely. So it depends on the nature of the problem you've identified and the theoretical solution you have, who you might contact. But the best place to go then, once you've figured out what type of individual you need. Now, you don't need to know exactly what everyone does, but looking at people's publication profiles would be a good start. It's, you know, if you've got a very novel problem and solution in mind, you're not necessarily going to find someone who's worked on exactly that before, because it's your novel solution that's there. So I think being open-minded to, if someone has biomaterials expertise or sensor knowledge or data science knowledge, it would be good to reach out to them in the first instance. And people in the university are very good at directing you elsewhere, so they may say to you, that's a great idea, but actually it's not where my expertise would be of best benefit. But I have a friend down the corridor who might be able to help you out a bit more. So, reaching out to some individuals in the first instance, offering to come in and meet with them. I think it's very important to come in and meet with people and have a good discussion around it. And I think it is important as well for people to be open in those discussions, because especially before you have a really clear solution in place, think of that person as someone who helps you solve that problem, as opposed to having a very closed conversation where you're not kind of getting the best of two minds coming together on it. So I think it's very important to be willing to listen to lots of different ways to address a problem, and having an open conversation about it. Yeah, I think they'd be my main, and follow up is very important as well. So, in every career, there is lots of noise and busyness going on. So it's very important that if people have found a potential match for what they want to do, that, you start to develop some sort of structured way to ensure that things move along. So regular meetings and clear plans to what the next steps are. I think these are the basic things, but that this is sometimes where these types of relationships really survive and thrive, is where there's a real structured, agreed approach to moving beyond the first nice chat,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because ultimately, you say the clinical people listening here, you're the applicants. This is your project, and if you're working with somebody, you need to figure out how best you can work together and to move it forward. Because if you're not driving it, it's not going to happen. And how does that other group work with you, etc. I think another really good point you made there is that, you may not know exactly who to talk to, but at least if you talk to somebody, they might know them, because Ireland is quite small. And I know that it could be somebody in the same department or in the same school or in the same university, or it could be somebody from one of those other clusters like Quorum or Insight, or that spread to other universities, etc., or the IoTs or the TUs. But yeah, so I think that's probably, we leave it there, Leisha, if you're happy with that. So that's, I'd like to thank you again for your time. It's Professor Laoise McNamara, so she's Vice Dean for Research and Innovation in the College of Science and Engineering in NUI Galway. And yeah, thank you again. Thanks so much for your time. I know how busy you are, so really appreciate it. And hopefully there's food for thought then for people, and for them not to be afraid to reach out to, now that they have kind of an idea of what the universities provide in terms of supports and how to engage, not to be shy.
Yeah, I should say as well, I mean, it's, it can be sometimes difficult to find exactly what you want. So, coming to me in the College of Science and Engineering, I may have some knowledge of good matches for people. So, I'm happy for people to reach out to me directly as well, to see if they know they need expertise in a particular area and they can't find that themselves easily, so that we can assist with that also.
Brilliant. Thanks, Leisha.